Good day. Welcome to another edition of In the Dugout with Mike Stenhouse, and I'm your host. And as you know, our tradition here is we're pretending we're in a dugout, a baseball dugout. So I'm going to wear the cap, and we invite all our guests to wear a cap. I'm going to wear a cap of the first major league team I played for, the Montreal Expos, today. Now, in the dugout, we'd often talk to our friends and our teammates about life and baseball and other matters. So same idea here. Only this time, I used to sit in the dugout a lot and just think and think about my game and think about the pitcher that day or whatever the case. So today, this is going to be a solo version of In the Dugout. And I'm going to be thinking out loud to you here. I want to give a little hope that I heard on a national phone call I was on the other day. This was with the State Policy Network, the national association our center belongs to. I won't mention his name because he asked to remain anonymous, but it was from a former CEO of a large biotech company and somebody who's now involved in crisis management, not from a public relations point of view, but from an internal operations point of view. And he's apparently on phone calls all the time with leaders in the biotech industry. Those are the industries who are often looking at treatments and drugs to treat the coronavirus. And he's on a lot of national calls with the president's task force on the coronavirus and others. And his message was, while we have all this focus on how many cases we have, how much testing we're going to be doing, and so many other people saying that we can't return to normal life until we have a vaccine, he's saying, no, two important points why that's not wrong and why we should be able to resume to something closer to normal much sooner than next year. First, he says, is the treatment option. What most people and what most media outlets aren't telling us is that there are dozens, if not hundreds of treatments and therapies right now being tested and being experimented on throughout the country. Increasingly, every day, we will have more and more proven treatments come online so we can help those people who may have severe symptoms. The recent antibody testing has shown that there's far, far more people who have contracted the coronavirus, but never knew it. Their symptoms either are non-existent or mild enough that they never alerted anybody to it. Certainly not strong enough to have to go to the hospital. But for those people who may end up in the hospital, may have severe symptoms, treatments are increasingly coming online. So we're not going to have to worry that getting the coronavirus is any kind of death sentence or even a sentence to severe illness. The treatments, we're going to be able to help all but the tiniest percentage of people in the future. Now, of course, nobody wants to catch it. We need to do our best to stop the spread, but it doesn't mean we have to stop our economy. The other point he made, we don't need a vaccine. It would be nice, it would be great, but think of HIV, think of hepatitis C. We do not have a vaccine for either of those horrible diseases, but yet we've managed them well. We have treatments for them, and if people do have it and catch that disease, we can treat them to the point where there's very low risk of loss of life anymore if you're treated early on. So that's the ray of hope, is that we can manage this crisis, even if we don't cure it, much sooner than later. The governor put out her 6 key indicators for reopening Rhode Island recently, and I got to say I was very unimpressed by them, especially when compared with the federal guidelines. The governor's guidelines in Rhode Island were very vague. They were very arbitrary. They offered very few data-driven specifics or benchmarks. It was very subjective. And it's clearly a case where the governor is serving as trial judge, and executioner all at the same time, judge, jury, and executioner. She's getting no help or guidance from the General Assembly, making decisions totally in a vacuum. And these 6 key indicators only give her more authority, if you would, to remain with her emergency powers or declaration of emergency powers, because the criteria she put forth are so vague and could be interpreted any way. So if the governor wanted to play her little power game and keep Rhode Island shut down, these 6 criteria would give her every reason to do so. So let's take a look at those right now. And I'm going to share my screen with you. So excuse me for, just fumbling around a little bit with this. We're all learning these new internet tools. But here's the federal criteria on the top. I know it's a little small, and here's the state criteria on the bottom. So let's go through these. Has the rate of spread continued to decrease? Now, I've said often, this is a false criteria. Uh, the antibody testing shows that a lot of people have contracted the disease, but it's harmless. They didn't even know they had it in many, many, many cases. Rhode Island has one of the most aggressive testing regimens in the whole country. So, of course, the more we test, the more we're going to find cases. But that doesn't mean that these are severe cases. To me, the real indicator here is what hospitalizations. Are people continually getting sick to the point and symptoms to the point where they need hospitalization? So number one, I think this governor can keep testing and keep saying, "Hey, we're not going to see a decrease in the rate of spread for a long time." So I think this is a false indicator. Number two, identifying community spread. Well, this. What are we going to do to identify the spread? Are we going to use cell phone data like you've heard a lot of people talk about in the past? This brings up question of civil rights, and again, what arbitrarily does this mean? What does community spread mean? One case of it, hundreds of cases of it? We don't know. Are people going to be asked to self-report or be forced to report their medical data into a government database? We don't believe in a government database, even if you voluntarily report your information. And then what's the recrimination going to be if people don't report? All right, number three, do we have the necessary supports in place for vulnerable population, vulnerable? Okay, we kind of agree with that. But again, by what measure and specifics do we mean supports in place? Nothing is provided here. Again, look at the federal uh, gating criteria above. 14 days of a downward trajectory. That's clear. 14 days of this. So it's very clear numbers within a time frame with specified numbers. The governor's indicators are completely vague and arbitrary. Let's go to number four. Does our healthcare system have the capacity and the PPE to handle future surges? Well, we don't even know if there's going to be a future surge. That's very presumptive in that case. And again, what does have the capacity mean? Last time, right now, the governor has estimated that we would need 2,250 beds. Right now, we're at 270. I mean, she's missed, her projections have missed by 8 times. So are we going to say, do we have the capacity for, again, a faulty model? Again, this is not good. It doesn't give any real numbers. It's all arbitrary and presumptive. Number five, do businesses, schools, have a plan? Well, we think that's not a bad idea. But again, who's going to be the judge of those plans? What do those plans have to do? Again, remember the governor early on said we need to do social distancing to flatten the curve, to give our healthcare system time to ramp up to handle the coming surge, which of course never came. Okay, fair in theory. Now the governor seems to be shifting the goal. We're going to do social distancing to stamp out spread of this disease. She once said, we want the spread to be zero. That's unreasonable. We don't get the flu down to zero. We live with risks every day in our lives, whether it's alcoholism, diabetes, cancer, even driving our car is a risk. We can't stop the spread to zero. If we can manage a spread and isolate people who do have it, that should be fine. So again, what kind of plan? And does the governor have such authority to impose such a regulation? I mean, this is a legal question that some members on our team are going to be looking at soon. Does the governor have the authority to impose these kinds of, intrusive and burdensome regulations on the business community unilaterally, or does she need General Assembly approval for it? So again, a key question. And the last one here in the governor's indicators, are we prepared to reimpose measures, which basically means reimpose restrictions on the economy and shutting it down, again, shuttering people out of work. Again, no. Are we prepared? What does that mean? Is she prepared in her own mind? Are we prepared as a society? How do you measure that? Again, these are really, really poor indicators. I cannot believe that somebody on her staff and with her team didn't come up with anything better than that. So here's what I'm recommending. Rhode Island Trucking Association put out a great media release just the week April 22nd. I didn't even realize that certain industries, including the Rhode Island Manufacturing Association, as we know, have been continued to allow to operate and employ their people so people could work and those industries could produce their goods and services. Grocery stores, liquor stores, but others have been arbitrarily shut down, churches and plant and garden centers. Why? Why them and not those? Well, the Rhode Island Manufacturing Association, they had their members sign a pledge that said that we will adhere to strict Department of Health, social distancing, and health guidelines to stop the spread within our places of work. I think that's great. Why shouldn't every business have the chance to sign such a pledge and say we can reopen and we will meet Rhode Island Department of Health guidelines? Obviously, and every industry will have its specific, differences, but they can address those. But why are some quote government determined essential businesses really more essential than others? Isn't every employer, every business, every worker essential to our state right now? And won't they be essential to our state's economy? Just reports this week are saying it could be early June until we start to reopen our economy. I mean, this just cannot stand. It is time to restore the right to every employer and every employee to earn a living. And if they have to sign a pledge like Rhode Island Manufacturing Association did, and I think that's great, by the way, every industry, every employer should be afforded the same right. So I support the drive to reopen Rhode Island under, and by the way, let's treat employers and employees as adults. All right, they don't need heavy-handed government mandates and threats of penalty if they don't comply. We should be trusted to take care of our own health. Employers and businesses are responsible people and entities, and they should be trusted, as should the workers, to adhere to strict, healthy protocol, to keep social distancing and keep us safe. And remember, we don't need government mandates. I'm going to say we can have a red flag kind of self-administered system where if a restaurant, let's say, or some other shop or other establishment doesn't practice social distancing, between social media, between public pressure, between the regular media, the free market has a way to handle this. If any business is creating an unsafe environment for work or for customers, we should raise public awareness about that business. This is not the same as bullying now. I'm talking about an honest and thoughtful approach. If somebody has clearly broken their promise and is not adhering to good, healthy protocols, then I think red flag type, not a law, but red flag type free market interactions will mean that business will have to change its ways or it's going to lose its customers, period. So I think it's time for government to start treating us like adults and to stop treating us like children. Let us handle our own health. In fact, studies have shown, a study out of Kansas shows that the 5 or 6 states that never imposed government mandated shutdowns, believe it or not, they have the lowest rate of incidence of the coronavirus. So again, this is just Mike Stenhouse thinking out loud in my dugout with my Expos hat on. And I'll look forward to talking to you next time. Thank you.